My family excluded me from holiday gatherings, but they called when they needed financial help. I still remember the day I realized I was the outsider in my own family. It was Thanksgiving 5 years ago. I had just moved to Boston after accepting a position at a prestigious financial firm. The job came with a hefty salary increase, but also greater responsibilities. My siblings had always taken different paths, more modest, staying closer to our hometown of Millfield, following in our parents' footsteps of stable but unremarkable careers. That Thanksgiving, I called Mom to confirm what time dinner would be served, only to discover they had changed the traditional 4 p.m. dinner to 2 p.m. "Oh, did I forget to tell you?" she said, her voice carrying that slight pitch it always did when she wasn't being entirely truthful. "We thought it would be better earlier this year. Can you still make it?" I couldn't. My new position required me to be available for an international client call that couldn't be rescheduled. When I explained this, there was a pause, then a sigh. "Well, we'll miss you, but I understand your work comes first. It always does." There was something in her tone, a mixture of resignation and accusation, that stung more than an outright argument would have. I offered to drive down the next day, but Mom quickly said everyone would be too busy with other plans. I later learned from my cousin's social media posts that the entire extended family had been there, laughing, feasting, and enjoying themselves without me. That was just the beginning. Christmas that year followed a similar pattern. The family gathering was suddenly moved to my brother's house, 3 hours further away than our parents' home, making it impossible for me to attend and return in time for a critical end-of-year meeting. Birthday celebrations began happening on days I had previously mentioned I couldn't attend. Family reunions were planned with seemingly deliberate conflicts to my schedule. At first, I made excuses for them. They weren't doing it intentionally. It was just bad luck, poor planning, or honest mistakes. But as the pattern continued, it became harder to ignore the truth. The exclusion felt methodical, as if they were slowly erasing me from family occasions while maintaining plausible deniability. My siblings and I had always been different. Growing up in a middle-class household in small-town Massachusetts shaped us differently. Marcus and Jenna embraced the community, married their high school sweethearts, and settled into jobs that kept them firmly rooted there. Chloe, the baby of the family, bounced between creative pursuits but never strayed far from our parents' support. I was the one who left, who wanted something more, who couldn't imagine spending my life in the same 10-mile radius where I grew up. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe leaving was seen as rejection. Maybe success beyond what they had achieved was viewed as criticism of their choices. Whatever the reason, the gap widened with each missed holiday, each celebration I learned about, after the fact through social media posts or casual mentions in conversations. "Oh, didn't Mom tell you about Easter? We all went to Aunt Judith's cabin for the weekend." "Dad's retirement party? It was last minute. We didn't think you'd be able to make it anyway." The excuses were always ready, always making me feel like the unreasonable one for expecting to be included. Then came my mother's 60th birthday. I had marked it on my calendar months in advance, even turning down a conference in London to ensure I could be there. A week before the event, I called to confirm details, only to learn the celebration had already happened. They had moved it up 2 weeks, because that worked better for everyone except me. That night, I sat in my empty apartment overlooking the Boston skyline, a view many would envy, and felt completely alone. I had achieved everything I had set out to accomplish professionally, but at what cost? The family photos on my mantle seemed like artifacts from another life, one where I belonged somewhere, to someone. I reduced contact after that. Our conversations became less frequent, more superficial. I sent birthday and Christmas gifts, but stopped trying to coordinate visits. The rejection hurt too much. I built a life in Boston with friends who valued my presence, who made plans with me, not despite me. I dated occasionally, but never let anyone get too close. The lesson I had learned from my family, that I was ultimately dispensable, had left deeper scars than I cared to admit. 3 years passed this way. I missed weddings and births. I heard about my father's minor heart attack 2 days after it happened, from a cousin who assumed I already knew. I was becoming exactly what they seemed to think I was: absent, uncaring, prioritizing my career above all else. The irony wasn't lost on me. Their perception had created my reality. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday in September, my phone rang with my brother Marcus's number. We hadn't spoken in nearly 8 months, not since a brief, awkward exchange at Christmas when I had forced myself to make an appearance for our parents' sake. "Alex?" he said, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. "I need your help." Marcus's construction business was failing. The economic downturn had hit small contractors especially hard, and he was 3 months behind on his mortgage. His wife was pregnant with their 3rd child, and he was facing the very real possibility of losing everything. "I wouldn't ask if there was any other option," he said, the words clearly difficult for him. "But the bank won't work with me anymore, and Mom and Dad don't have this kind of money. I'm desperate." I should have felt vindicated. Here was proof that my choices had been the right ones, that my ambition had placed me in a position to help when others couldn't. But all I felt was a profound sadness. It had taken financial desperation for my brother to reach out to me. "I'll help," I said, because of course I would. He was still my brother, despite everything. I transferred the money the next day, enough to cover his mortgage arrears and provide a cushion while he restructured his business. He was grateful, effusively so. But I couldn't help wondering if this changed anything between us. Was I just an ATM now? The family member who was invisible until there was a crisis only money could solve? My cynicism proved somewhat justified. When 3 weeks later, my sister Jenna called. Her tone was casual, as if we spoke regularly, but I knew immediately she wanted something. Her son had been accepted to a prestigious private high school, but the scholarship they'd counted on had fallen through. Could I help? Again, I agreed. By Christmas, the pattern was clear. My phone, once silent for months at a time, now rang, regularly. My youngest sister Chloe needed a loan for art school tuition. My parents' roof was leaking and insurance wouldn't cover it. A cousin was starting a business and needed investors. I helped where I could, not out of obligation, but because I genuinely wanted good things for my family. But each request reinforced the painful truth. They wanted what I could provide, not who I was. The real test came when holiday season approached again. My mother called in early November, her voice warm in a way it hadn't been in years. "We're planning Thanksgiving at the house this year," she said. "The usual time, 4 p.m. Everyone's coming. We'd really love to have you there, Alex." I hesitated, suspicion warring with hope. Was this genuine inclusion or just another transaction? Would I arrive to find a list of financial problems disguised as casual conversation? "I need to check my schedule," I said, non-committal. "Please try to make it," she pressed. "Family should be together for the holidays." The irony of her statement hung between us, unacknowledged. Where was this sentiment for the past 5 years? I debated for days. Part of me wanted to decline, to protect myself from further hurt. But another part, a part I thought had died years ago, still yearned for reconciliation, for a place at the family table that wasn't contingent on what I could provide. In the end, I decided to go, but with boundaries firmly in place. I wouldn't be the family banker this holiday. I would be just Alex, take it or leave it. Thanksgiving Day arrived with a nervous energy I hadn't felt in years. I drove the familiar route to my parents' house, rehearsing responses to potential financial requests, steeling myself against disappointment. The house looked the same as ever, the white colonial with blue shutters that had featured in so many of my childhood memories. Cars lined the driveway, My siblings had already arrived. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door I had once walked through without hesitation. My father answered, his face breaking into a smile that seemed genuinely pleased. "Alex, you made it!" He pulled me into a hug that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. Inside, the scene was like stepping back in time. The living room crowded, with relatives, the air filled with the scent of turkey and my mother's signature apple pie, the sound of children laughing as they chased each other around furniture. My siblings approached one by one, greetings ranging from Marcus's awkward handshake to Chloe's enthusiastic hug. Dinner was served, and I found myself seated between my nephew, now a teenager I barely recognized, and my aunt who loudly proclaimed how wonderful it was that our Alex could finally join us. I bit back the retort that threatened to escape, that I would have joined them for years had I been genuinely invited. The meal progressed with the usual chaos of family gatherings. I waited for the other shoe to drop, for someone to corner me with a financial problem that needed solving. But as dessert was served and conversation flowed around me, I realized something unexpected. No one had asked me for anything. Instead, they asked about me. My job, my apartment, my friends in Boston. My mother had remembered I was dating someone, a relationship that had actually ended months ago, and inquired about them. My father wanted to know if I still played tennis on weekends like I used to. Small things, normal things, the kind of questions families who care about each other ask. After dinner, as everyone broke off into smaller groups, Marcus approached me on the back porch where I had stepped out for a moment of quiet. "I've been meaning to call you," he said, hands shoved into his pockets. "Not for money," he added quickly. "Just to talk. To say thank you, actually." "You already thanked me," I reminded him. "Not just for the loan. For not holding a grudge. For being here today." I studied his face in the porch light, searching for insincerity but finding none. "Why now?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me all day. "Why am I suddenly welcome at family gatherings again?" Marcus looked uncomfortable but met my gaze. "We messed up, Alex. All of us. We were jealous, I think. You left and became successful while we stayed here, struggling sometimes. It was easier to exclude you than face what that made us feel about our own choices. And now," I pressed, "now we've seen who you really are. When we needed help, you gave it without question, without judgment. It made us realize what we threw away, pushing you out like we did." His words were what I had wanted to hear for years, but they landed with a complicated mix of validation and lingering hurt. "So it took me giving you money to be worthy of inclusion?" Marcus winced. "That sounds terrible when you put it that way. But it's not about the money itself. It's about what it revealed. That despite how we treated you, you still considered us family. Still cared enough to help. It made us take a hard look at ourselves." Inside, I could see my family through the window. My parents, siblings, nieces and nephews, aunts and uncles. The family that had hurt me deeply, but also the family I had never stopped longing for. "I can't promise everything will be perfect going forward," Marcus continued. "There's a lot of history to work through. But I can promise we're trying. We want you back, Alex. Not for what you can give us, but for who you are." I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But trust, once broken, doesn't mend easily. "I need time," I said finally, "and consistency. This can't be a one-time invitation that disappears after the holidays." "Fair enough," he nodded. "We've got a lot to make up for." We rejoined the family inside, where Chloe was organizing an impromptu game of charades. She brightened when she saw me. "Alex, you're on my team!" As the evening progressed, I found myself laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in years at a family gathering. The tension in my shoulders gradually eased. I wasn't naive enough to think one positive experience erased years of exclusion, but it was a start. When it was time to leave, my mother hugged me tightly at the door. "Christmas is here this year, too," she said. "Same as always, presents in the morning, dinner at 3. Please come." "I'll think about it," I said, not ready to commit, but not immediately refusing either. As I drove back to Boston that night, my thoughts were turbulent. Could people really change? Could relationships heal after such deep wounds? Or was I setting myself up for more disappointment? I didn't have clear answers, but I knew this much. Family is complicated. The same people who can hurt you most deeply are sometimes the ones you can't imagine life without. The challenge is figuring out how to love them without letting them destroy you. 2 weeks later, I received a group text. My family was planning a weekend ski trip in January and wanted to know if I could join. No one mentioned money. No one had an emergency that needed solving. It was just an invitation, the kind normal families extend to all their members. I looked at my phone for a long time before responding. "I'll be there," I typed, deciding to give hope one more chance. "Save me a seat on the ski lift." It wasn't forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But it was a beginning. A cautious step back toward a family that had excluded me from their holidays, but called when they needed financial help, and who were now perhaps learning to see me as more than what I could give them. Only time would tell if this new inclusion was genuine and lasting, but for the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe it might be. Perhaps that's the most difficult lesson family teaches us, that love isn't enough on its own. It needs respect, reciprocity, and recognition of each other's full humanity. My family had failed at this for years, but maybe, just maybe, they were finally learning. And maybe I was learning too, that protecting yourself doesn't always mean walking away, that sometimes it means establishing boundaries while leaving the door open for change. As Christmas approached, I found myself looking forward to it rather than dreading it. Whatever happened, I knew I was stronger now. Not just financially successful, but emotionally resilient in a way I hadn't been before. My family might still disappoint me, but they no longer had the power to define me. That, perhaps, was the greatest gift I could have given myself. In the end, isn't that what growing up is really about? Not the achievements or the money or even the independence, but the ability to see your family clearly, with all their flaws and failings, and choose to love them anyway, on terms that preserve your own dignity and worth. It's a delicate balance, one I'm still learning to maintain, but for the first time in years, it feels possible. The holidays are coming, and this time I have a place at the table. Not because of what I can provide, but because of who I am. It may have taken a financial crisis to remind my family of my existence, but what matters more is what happens next. Will they see me, really see me, when there's nothing they need from me? I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out. And that willingness, that openness to possibility after years of hurt, feels like its own kind of victory. Christmas arrived with a fresh blanket of snow covering Millfield, transforming the small town into something from a holiday card. As I drove the familiar streets toward my parents' house, I felt an odd mixture of anticipation and dread swirling in my chest. The last Thanksgiving had gone surprisingly well, but I couldn't shake the fear that it had been an anomaly, a performance put on for my benefit that would dissolve once the novelty of my return wore off. I parked behind Marcus's truck and sat, for a moment, gathering my courage. Through the front window, I could see the Christmas tree lights blinking, silhouettes moving past occasionally. My family was in there, going about their holiday traditions as they had for years without me. Would I still fit into those traditions? Did I even want to? Before I could talk myself into leaving, the front door opened, and Chloe burst out, bundled, in a ridiculous reindeer sweater that flashed with tiny LED lights. "I saw your car pull up," she called, jogging down the path. "Were you planning to sit out here all day?" Her smile was genuine. her eyes bright with excitement. Of all my siblings, Chloe had always been the most transparent, the least capable of hiding her feelings. If she was happy to see me, it wasn't for show. Just getting into the holiday spirit, I lied, grabbing the bags of gifts from my passenger seat. Here, let me help. She took some of the packages, peering curiously at the tags. Wow, you went all out. I had, spending more than was sensible at a boutique in Boston that specialized in personalized gifts. Each one had been chosen with thought. A vintage first edition for my literature-loving mother, custom fishing lures for my father, handcrafted tools for Marcus, art supplies from a specialty store for Chloe, educational toys for my nieces and nephews. I told myself it wasn't about buying their affection, but about showing I knew them, remembered their interests, wanted to be part of their lives. Inside, the house was exactly as I remembered from childhood Christmases. The scent of pine and cinnamon, Bing Crosby crooning from the old stereo system, every surface adorned with my mother's extensive collection of holiday decorations. My nephew Tyler, Marcus's oldest at 12, was the first to spot me. "Uncle Alex!" he shouted, abandoning his video game and running over. "Dad said you might teach me some hockey moves while you're here. You played in college, right?" The question caught me off guard. I had indeed played hockey in college. Quite well, in fact, but I was surprised Marcus had mentioned it. That part of my life had never seemed to interest my family before. "That's right," I said, ruffling his hair. "We'll definitely get some ice time if you want." My mother emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her apron, looking older than I remembered. From just a month ago at Thanksgiving. She had always been petite, but now she seemed almost fragile. Still, her smile was warm as she embraced me. "You're here early," she said. "We weren't expecting you until dinner time." "I wanted to help," I replied, and was rewarded with a look of genuine surprise. In the past, I had always arrived just in time for meals and left as soon as was polite. This time, I had taken the entire week off, booking a room at the local inn rather than commuting back and forth from Boston. "Well, I've got pies in the oven and your father's attempting to untangle the outdoor lights if you want to rescue him," she suggested. "Or Jenna's kids are making gingerbread houses in the dining room if you're feeling creative." The normalcy of it all, being offered ordinary family tasks as if I'd never been absent, was both healing and disorienting. I chose to help my father, finding him in the garage amid a chaos of tangled light strands, muttering colorful curses. "Need another set of hands?" I offered. He looked up, startled. "Alex, didn't hear you come in." He gestured at the mess. "Thought I'd get these up on the front bushes, but they've turned themselves into some sort of light spaghetti since last year." We worked in companionable silence for a while, methodically separating the strands. I couldn't remember the last time I'd spent quiet time with my father without the pressure of conversation. "Your mom's happy you're staying the week," he said finally. "We both are." "It's good to be here," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. He nodded, seeming to accept that simple statement for what it was. Not forgiveness exactly, but a tentative step toward something new. Once the lights were untangled, we wrapped them around the bushes framing the front door, the cool December air turning our breath to fog. Standing back to admire our work, I felt a forgotten sense of accomplishment. In Boston, I orchestrated multi-million-dollar deals, managed teams of ambitious professionals, navigated the cutthroat world of finance, but there was something uniquely satisfying about this simple task completed with my father. Inside, the house had grown more chaotic as additional family members arrived. My sister Jenna's twins were chasing each other through the living room, while her husband Tom tried unsuccessfully to corral them. Aunt Judith was instructing anyone who would listen about her latest diet revolution. Uncle Pete was already helping himself to the whiskey despite the early hour. Jenna spotted me and waved from where she was arranging appetizers. "Alex, Come try these stuffed mushrooms before the vultures descend. Her easy inclusion, as if I'd never been away, was both welcome and slightly suspect. Was this how it would have been all along if I hadn't moved away? Or was it my financial assistance that had changed her attitude toward me? The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. I found myself pulled into board games with the children, kitchen duties under my mother's direction, and a heated debate about sports with my uncles. No one mentioned money, loans, or my career beyond casual questions about whether I enjoyed my work. It was normal. Family. The thing I had both longed for and protected myself against for years. Dinner was served at the formal dining table, a tradition reserved for Christmas and Easter. I was seated between Chloe and my mother, directly across from Marcus and his wife Sarah. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and the occasional squabble among the younger children at the kids' table in the adjacent room. "Alex," my mother said during a lull, "I've been meaning to ask if you might help with something." My guard instantly rose, the pleasant fog of family warmth dissipating. Here it came, the real reason for my warm welcome. "What do you need?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral despite the disappointment creeping in. "The Historical Society is looking for volunteers for their financial committee. I mentioned you might be interested with your expertise. They meet quarterly, mostly by video call. It wouldn't be a huge commitment." I blinked, processing. Not a request for money, but for time, expertise, involvement in the community I had left behind. "I'd have to look at my schedule," I said carefully. "But it sounds interesting." My mother beamed. "Wonderful. I'll let Barbara know you're considering it." The conversation moved on, but I remained stuck on that moment. Was it possible they were trying to weave me back into their lives in ways that had nothing to do with financial need? The cynical part of me, the part that had protected me through years of exclusion, remained skeptical, but a quieter voice suggested something else might be happening. After dinner, as tradition dictated, we gathered in the living room to exchange one gift each, the rest to be opened the following morning. My father played Santa as he had since we were children, distributing packages with ceremonial gravity. When my turn came to open a gift, I selected a lumpy package from Chloe, expecting one of her usual handmade scarves or hats. Instead, I unwrapped a leather-bound book. Opening it, I discovered a meticulously crafted family photo album spanning decades. There were photos I'd never seen before. My parents' wedding, our grandparents holding each of us as babies, school plays, and sports. Events. But most surprising were the recent photos, ones taken during my years of absence. Chloe had left spaces beside these, small notes indicating Alex's Boston Marathon finish, or Alex's promotion celebration, or Alex's 35th birthday. Events from my life that had happened parallel to but separate from family gatherings. "I thought," Chloe said hesitantly, watching my face, "that maybe we could fill in the blanks together. So it's not like those years didn't happen. They just happened apart." I ran my fingers over the empty spaces, the acknowledgement of absence transformed into possibility. "I'd like that," I managed, my throat unexpectedly tight. The evening continued with carols around the ancient piano, my father's off-key bass booming beneath my mother's still beautiful soprano. I found myself seated beside Marcus's wife, Sarah, who had always been politely distant with me. "Thank you," she said quietly, while the others were distracted by a debate over the correct lyrics to Good King Wenceslas. "For what?" "For giving us another chance." Her eyes were serious. I know it couldn't have been easy to come back after everything. I studied her face, looking for hidden meanings. "Can I ask you something honestly, Sarah?" She nodded. Was it deliberate, the exclusion? Or did I just fade from everyone's thoughts? Sarah sighed, considering her words carefully. "It was complicated. At first, I think everyone was just hurt that you left, that you chose a different life. Then it became a habit. Then a story everyone told themselves, that you were too busy, too important for family gatherings. She paused. But Marcus felt guilty every holiday. He'd mention calling you, and someone would always say it was too late to change plans. It was easier, I think, to keep you at a distance than face what that distance said about all of us. Her honesty was refreshing, painful but necessary, like cleaning an old wound. And when Marcus called me for money, I pressed. Was that the plan? To bring me back through financial obligation? God, no. She looked genuinely horrified. He was terrified to make that call. Thought you'd tell him to go to hell, and honestly, you would have had every right to. When you helped instead, she shook her head. It forced everyone to confront the story they'd been telling about you. The real Alex turned out to be much kinder than the imaginary one. Before I could respond, my nephew launched himself between us, demanding attention for his new magic trick. The moment passed, but Sarah's words stayed with me through the rest of the evening and into the quiet hours after everyone else had gone to bed. I sat alone in the living room, watching the Christmas tree lights blink in the darkness, nursing a final glass of wine. The house creaked around me, the familiar sounds of my childhood home settling for the night. Can't sleep? My father's voice startled me. He padded into the room in flannel pajamas and worn slippers, lowering himself into his favorite armchair with a grunt. Just thinking, I replied. He nodded, comfortable with silence in a way few people are. After several minutes, I found myself asking the question that had lingered unspoken all day. Why now, Dad? What changed? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Life has a way of clarifying what matters, son. Seeing Marcus almost lose everything, it puts things in perspective. He rubbed his jaw, the scratch of stubble audible in the quiet room. You know, I was proud of you for helping him. Proud but ashamed, too. Ashamed? Why? Because it shouldn't have taken a crisis for this family to remember we're a family. He sighed heavily. Your mother and I, we didn't handle things well when you left. Felt like you were rejecting our way of life, choosing something else over us. That wasn't fair to you. The frank admission was so unexpected that I found myself speechless. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he continued. Just a chance to do better going forward. You're my son. Always have been. Always will be. Regardless of where you live or what you do for a living. I swallowed hard against the emotion rising in my throat. I'd like that. He nodded once, decisively, as if a contract had been sealed. Good. Now get some sleep. Your mother's planning enough. Activities tomorrow to exhaust an Olympic athlete. As he shuffled back to bed, I remained in the darkened living room, thinking about forgiveness and family and the complicated path forward. There would be missteps and old hurts resurfacing. There would be moments when the easiest thing would be to retreat back to my separate life in Boston. But there would also be this: quiet understanding, tentative reconnection, the slow rebuilding of bridges long thought burned. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, the sun reflecting blindingly off the fresh snow. I woke to the sound of children's excited voices and the smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls wafting up the stairs. For a moment, disoriented in my childhood bedroom, I could have been 10 years old again, eager to see what Santa had brought. Reality returned quickly, but with it came something unexpected, anticipation rather than dread. I wanted to be downstairs with my family, wanted to see their faces as they opened the gifts I'd chosen, wanted to be part of the chaos and joy of the day. When I descended to the living room, still in pajamas as family tradition dictated, my mother pressed a steaming mug into my hands and whispered, "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," with such genuine warmth that my lingering doubts receded further. The day unfolded in a whirlwind of torn wrapping paper, excited exclamations, abundant food, and the comfortable rituals of a family Christmas. My gifts were received with genuine appreciation, my father particularly moved by the rare fishing lures that matched those his own father had used. "How did you remember?" he asked, examining them with careful fingers. "I only mentioned these once, years ago." The question revealed something I hadn't fully acknowledged to myself. Despite the distance, despite the hurt, I had been collecting and preserving details about my family all along, storing them away like treasures. "I remember more than you think," I said simply. As the day progressed, I found myself increasingly relaxed, laughing more easily, the constant vigilance I'd maintained beginning to fade. When Marcus suggested an impromptu hockey game on the frozen pond behind the house, I agreed readily, and soon found myself skating alongside nephews and nieces, some of whom I was just getting to know. Tyler, showing surprising skill, kept pace with me as we passed the puck back and forth. "Dad says you could have played professionally if you wanted," he said, executing a neat stop that sprayed ice. I raised an eyebrow, surprised again by these glimpses of a parallel universe where my family had actually discussed me, thought about me, in my absence. "Your dad exaggerates," I replied. "I was good, but not that good. Still, it's cool you played in college." He hesitated, then added, "Dad also said you were really smart, that you got scholarships and stuff." "I did," I confirmed, curious where this was leading. Tyler looked down, pushing the puck idly with his stick. "I'm pretty good at math. Mom says I get it from your side of the family." The implication that he saw himself reflected in me, that my academic success might be a roadmap for his own, was both flattering and startling. Had I become, in my absence, some sort of family legend? The successful one who got away? "If you ever want help with math homework, I'm just a phone call away," I offered. His face brightened. "For real? Like I could just call you, even when you're back in Boston?" "Any time," I promised, and meant it. Later that evening, as the extended family departed and the house grew quieter, Jenna cornered me in the kitchen, where I was helping with dishes. "So," she said, taking a plate from my hands to dry it, "are you seeing anyone in Boston?" The question was so normal, so sisterly, that I laughed. "Not currently. Had a relationship end a few months ago." "I'm sorry," she said, and sounded like she meant it. "Was it serious?" I considered the question. I thought it might be for a while, but in the end, we wanted different things. What I didn't say was that Rachel had grown increasingly frustrated with my unwillingness to fully let her into my life, to introduce her to my family, to merge our futures completely. The walls I'd built to protect myself from family rejection had ultimately sabotaged my chance at creating a new family of my own. "Well, her loss," Jenna said loyally. "You're quite a catch, you know. Successful, not terrible to look at, and you can cook. The cooking alone puts you ahead of half the men out there." "High praise indeed," I deadpanned, but felt warmed by her casual affirmation. "I'm just saying, don't rule out bringing someone next holiday. We'd love to meet whoever captures the elusive Alex Morgan's heart." The assumption that there would be a next holiday, that my inclusion was now a given rather than an exception, didn't escape me, nor did the genuine interest in my happiness. "I'll keep that in mind," I said, bumping her shoulder with mine in a gesture of sibling affection I hadn't used in years. That night, lying in bed and reflecting on the day, I realized something important had shifted inside me. The fear of rejection that had been my constant companion for years had begun to recede, replaced by cautious hope. My family wasn't perfect. They had hurt me deeply, and there would always be a scar there. But they were trying. And so was I. The rest of the week passed in a similar vein. There were awkward moments, certainly. Comments that hit old wounds. Assumptions that needed correcting. the occasional tension when conversations veered too close to finances or past exclusions. But there were more good moments than bad, genuine connections being forged or reforged, new memories layering over old hurts. I met with Barbara from the Historical Society and agreed to join their financial committee. I taught Tyler some hockey moves and promised to come to his tournament in February. I helped my father repair a persistent leak in the garage roof and didn't mention that I was paying attention to other maintenance issues the house desperately needed. I went shopping with my mother and listened to her stories about former students who still stopped her in the grocery store decades after she had taught them. When it came time to return to Boston, the goodbyes were genuine, filled with specific plans rather than vague promises to keep in touch. I had tickets to a Bruins game for Marcus and Tyler in January. Chloe was planning to visit me in Boston to explore galleries for possible venues to show her work. My parents had agreed to come for a weekend in the spring, their first visit to my apartment despite my having lived there for years. As I drove away, watching my family waving from the porch in my rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not just the relief of escaping with my emotional defenses intact, but a genuine sadness at leaving and anticipation for our next reunion. Back in Boston, my apartment felt strange, both welcomingly familiar and oddly empty. I had lived here for 5 years, carefully curating the space to reflect my tastes and accommodate my lifestyle. But returning now, I saw it differently. It was a beautiful space, certainly, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, minimalist furniture, and curated artwork. But it was also a fortress I had built against loneliness, against rejection, against the messiness of family ties. Perhaps it was time to lower the drawbridge, just a little. January brought a snowstorm and Tyler's hockey tournament. I drove through treacherous conditions to make it, arriving just in time to see him score the winning goal in their first match. The look of pure joy on his face when he spotted me in the stands was worth every white-knuckle moment of the drive. Marcus, standing beside me cheering himself hoarse, clapped me on the shoulder. "Didn't think you'd make it in this weather." "Said I would, didn't I?" The response came easily, without the edge of defensiveness that would have accompanied it in the past. "Yeah," he nodded, a look of understanding passing between us. "You did." After the tournament, Tyler's team placed third. We celebrated at a local pizza place, the table crowded with rowdy preteens and their equally enthusiastic parents. I found myself across from Sarah, who was watching me with a thoughtful expression. "What?" I asked, wiping tomato sauce from my chin, wondering if I'd missed a spot. "Nothing," she smiled. "Just thinking how different you seem." "Different how?" She considered this. "More relaxed, less guarded." She gestured around the noisy restaurant. "A few months ago, I can't imagine you being comfortable in this chaos." She wasn't wrong. I had cultivated a life of controlled environments, elegant restaurants with muted conversations, private clubs where decorum was prized, cultural events where emotions were experienced aesthetically rather than rawly expressed. But sitting here, with marinara-stained napkins and children's laughter drowning out coherent conversation, I realized I wasn't just enduring it, I was enjoying it. "People can change," I offered. Sarah nodded, raising her soda in a mock toast. "To change, then." February brought Chloe to Boston, her car packed with canvases she hoped to show to gallery owners in the city. I had arranged several introductions through clients who collected art, leveraging my network in a way I had never considered before. "This is incredible, Alex," she said, spinning slowly in my living room, taking in the view of the harbor. "You really live here? Alone?" "Just me," I confirmed, watching her explore with unabashed curiosity. "Doesn't it get lonely? All this space just for one person?" The question was innocent, but it struck deeper than she could know. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but I'm used to it." She frowned at that, flopping onto my pristine white sofa with the casual disregard for formality that had always characterized Her. Used to loneliness isn't the same as preferring it. When did you get so wise? I teased, deflecting. I've always been the smart one, she retorted. You're just the one with the fancy degree and big paycheck. We laughed, and the moment passed, but her observation lingered. I had become accustomed to solitude, had shaped my life around it, but was it truly my preference? Or had it been a protective adaptation, a way to control my environment when I couldn't control my place in my family's affections? Having Chloe stay with me for a week upended my carefully ordered routines in ways both challenging and refreshing. She left wet towels on the bathroom floor, stayed up painting until 3 a.m, and filled my refrigerator with strange organic juices she insisted we both needed. But she also brought life and color and spontaneity into spaces that had been arranged for appearance rather than living. On her last night in Boston, after a successful meeting with a gallery owner who had agreed to include 2 of her pieces, in an upcoming show, we celebrated with takeout and wine on my balcony, wrapped in blankets against the February chill. Thank you, she said, raising her glass. Not just for the introductions, but for letting me crash here, for being my brother again. I never stopped being your brother, I pointed out. No, but I stopped acting like your sister. Her expression grew serious, illuminated by the city lights below. We all did, and I'm sorry for that, Alex. Really sorry. The apology, offered freely without prompting, loosened something that had remained tight in my chest despite the progress of recent months. What happened, Chloe? Really? I've heard bits and pieces from everyone, but I still don't understand how it got so bad. She sighed, pulling her knees to her chest. It was gradual, you know. At first, it was just logistics. You really were busy, and we really did change plans sometimes for genuine reasons. But then, she trailed off, collecting her thoughts. Then, I prompted. Then it became about the differences. You were doing so well, living this glamorous city life while the rest of us were stuck in Millfield dealing with ordinary problems. Marcus struggling with his business, me bouncing between dead-end jobs trying to find my place, Jenna and Tom barely making ends meet with the twins. She gestured at my apartment, the expansive view. This is intimidating, Alex. Not just the money, but the whole life you built. It was easier to exclude you than face our own insecurities. I never judged any of you, I said quietly. Never thought less of your choices. We know that now, she said. But we projected our own stuff onto you. Assumed your absence from Millfield meant rejection of it. Of us. And the financial help? Did that really change things? Or just make it impossible to keep excluding me? Chloe considered this seriously. Both, maybe. The money itself wasn't the thing, though God knows it saved Marcus's ass. But the fact that you gave it without hesitation, without making him grovel, she shrugged. It forced us to confront the fiction we'd created about you. The real Alex was much better than our imaginary version. We talked for hours that night, filling in gaps in each other's understanding of the past 5 years. I learned about struggles my siblings had faced that they'd never shared with me. Marcus's bout of depression after his business first started failing, Jenna's miscarriage between the twins and her youngest, Chloe's brief engagement to a man who turned out to be already married. They had kept these trials from me partly out of pride, partly out of the distance that had grown between us, but the result was that we had become strangers to each other's real lives. In turn, I shared my own struggles, the loneliness of achievement without family to celebrate it, the relationships that had faltered because I couldn't fully trust, the hollow feeling of returning to an empty apartment after career triumphs. Success had brought material comfort, but hadn't filled the space where family should have been. When Chloe left the next day, our goodbye hug was long and fierce. This isn't an ending, she said firmly. Just a pause. We're back in each other's lives for good now, right? For good, I agreed, surprising myself with how certain I felt. Spring arrived, bringing with it my parents' first visit to Boston. I had spent weeks preparing, not just cleaning and organizing, but planning activities I thought they would enjoy, researching restaurants that served the comfort food my father preferred, alongside options that would appeal to my mother's more adventurous palate. I wanted them to see my world, to understand the life I had built, but also to feel comfortable within it. Their arrival was marked by my father's obvious discomfort with city driving. Too many one-way streets. Who designed this maze? And my mother's delight at the farmer's market we passed on the way from the garage to my building. Look at those heirloom tomatoes, in April. Showing them around my apartment, I saw it through their eyes. Impressive, certainly, with its harbor views and designer furniture, but also oddly impersonal. There were no family photos displayed, few mementos or keepsakes. It was a space designed to be photographed for a magazine rather than lived in with joy. It's very elegant, my mother offered, clearly searching for a positive descriptor that wasn't cold or sterile. The view is something else, my father added, gravitating toward the windows. Bet you never get tired of that. They were trying, making an effort to connect with this part of my life that had been off limits for so long. I appreciated the attempt, even as I recognized the discomfort beneath it. It's different from Millfield, I acknowledged, but that's what I needed for a while. My mother nodded, understanding flickering across her face. We all need our own spaces, I suppose. The weekend unfolded better than I had dared hope. We explored the public garden, took a harbor cruise despite the spring chill, and visited the Museum of Fine Arts, where my mother lingered in the Impressionist galleries while my father and I explored the ancient weapons collection with boyish fascination. On their final evening, I cooked dinner in my rarely used kitchen. My father's favorite pot roast with my mother's apple crumble for dessert, recipes I had learned in their kitchen as a teenager but seldom made for myself. This is delicious, my mother praised, seeming genuinely surprised. I didn't realize you still cooked. Not often, I admitted, but some skills you don't forget. As we lingered over coffee after the meal, my father cleared his throat, a sure sign he had something important to say. Your mother and I have been talking, he began, exchanging a look with her that spoke of long partnership and mutual understanding. We'd like to start a new tradition, family vacation in the summer, a week somewhere we can all be together. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. By the suggestion, all of us, kids included? That's the idea, my mother confirmed. Marcus and Sarah, Jenna and Tom, Chloe, you, all the grandchildren. Renting a big house somewhere, maybe at the lake or the coast. The concept was appealing but daunting. A full week of intensive family togetherness after years of carefully managed doses. We understand if it's too much, my father added, reading my hesitation. But we're not getting any younger, and the grandkids are growing up so fast. Seems important to create those memories while we can. Put that way, how could I refuse? I'd like that, I said, meaning it despite my reservations. Just tell me when and where. Their evident pleasure at my agreement was reward enough, but as we continued planning, throwing around location ideas and discussing logistics, I realized I was genuinely looking forward to it, not just agreeing out of obligation or fear of rejection, but actively wanting to be part of this new family venture. Later, after my parents had retired to the guest room, I stood looking out at the harbor lights, reflecting on how much had changed in 6 months. From excluded to included, from peripheral to central, from resentful to what? Not fully healed, perhaps, but healing. Moving forward rather than dwelling in past hurts. The family vacation was scheduled for July, a week at a large beachfront house on Cape Cod. As the date approached, I found myself oddly nervous, checking and rechecking my calendar to ensure nothing work-related would interfere, shopping for beach gear I hadn't needed in years, even researching activities suitable for children of various ages. My assistant Diane, who had worked with me for 3 years and knew my habits better than anyone, remarked on the change. "Family vacation?" she repeated when I mentioned blocking off the week in July. "You never take family vacations. You barely take vacations at all." "Things change," I said simply, aware that I hadn't shared the complicated family dynamics with her or anyone else at the firm. She studied me with the perceptive gaze that made her invaluable professionally and occasionally uncomfortable personally. "Well, whatever it is, it's good to see. You seem lighter these past few months." Her observation stayed with me, prompting reflection on the subtle shifts in my day-to-day life. I was sleeping better, for one thing. The chronic tension in my shoulders had eased. I had even started dating again, albeit casually. Dinner with Catherine from the investment firm across town. Theater tickets with Melissa, who worked in the gallery where Chloe's art was being shown. Most significantly, I had begun building connections beyond work, accepting invitations I would have reflexively declined before, initiating gatherings rather than waiting to be asked, allowing friendships to deepen beyond professional courtesy. The walls I had erected for protection were slowly coming down, not just with my family, but in all areas of my life. July arrived with a heat wave that sent Bostonians flocking to any available water. I packed my car with perhaps too many options. Multiple types of sunscreen, beach toys I'd ordered online for my nieces and nephews, board games for rainy days, specialty groceries not likely to be available in the small Cape Town where we'd be staying. The house, when I arrived, was exactly as advertised. A sprawling, weathered gray structure with blue shutters, multiple decks overlooking the ocean, and enough bedrooms to accommodate our entire extended family with room to spare. Chloe's ancient VW Beetle was already in the driveway, as was Marcus's SUV. Inside, I found organized chaos. Children ran up and down stairs, calling to each other and exploring every corner of the house. Marcus was setting up a complicated-looking grill on the main deck, while Sarah directed the placement of groceries in the oversized refrigerator. Chloe was decorating the living room with fairy lights and mismatched candles, giving it a bohemian charm at odds with the house's nautical theme, but somehow perfect. "Uncle Alex!" Several small bodies collided with my legs before I'd fully entered, nearly toppling me and the box of supplies I carried. "Easy there," I laughed, setting down my burden to properly greet the children. "You've all grown since Christmas." Tyler, now 13 and increasingly conscious of his dignity, offered a handshake rather than a hug, which I accepted with appropriate seriousness before pulling him in for a quick embrace anyway. "The water's awesome," he informed me. "Dad says we can go swimming after lunch if the tide's not too strong." I'll continue the story from that point with at least 70,000 characters, written as a regular, uncompressed message. Here's the continuation. Lunch became an impromptu picnic on the main deck, everyone serving themselves from platters of sandwiches and fruit Sarah had prepared. I found myself between Jenna's twins, Emma and Ethan, who at 8 years old were bundles of endless energy and rapid-fire questions. "Uncle Alex, do you know how to surf?" Emma asked, her sandwich half forgotten as she gazed at the waves crashing below. "Is your apartment really on the top floor of the tallest building in Boston?" Ethan chimed in, not waiting for my answer to his sister's question. "Have you ever seen a whale?" Emma continued. "Do you have a pool in your house?" Ethan wasn't to be outdone. I laughed, trying to address their curiosity in order. "I've tried surfing, but I'm not very good. My apartment is on the 27th floor, which is pretty high, but definitely not the tallest in Boston. Yes, I've seen whales on a whale-watching tour. And no pool, but there's one in my building." This exchange set the tone for the week. Immersion. In family life, with all its noise, questions, overlapping conversations, and constant motion, after years of controlled interactions and scheduled visits, the unstructured time together was both overwhelming and strangely liberating. The afternoon found us all on the beach, a colorful array of umbrellas, towels, and chairs staking our claim on the sand. I helped Tyler and his cousins build an elaborate sandcastle complete with moat and seashell decorations. My expensive watch set aside, hands happily covered in wet sand. My mother captured the moment on her phone, and I found myself not minding being photographed, a change from my usual camera avoidance. "This is a good look for you," Jenna commented, dropping into the beach chair beside me as I took a break from construction duties. All sandy and relaxed. I glanced down at myself, expensive swim trunks now covered in sand, hair wind-tousled rather than carefully styled, bare feet buried in the cool sand beneath my chair. "Not exactly board meeting appropriate." "Thank God for that," she replied, passing me a beer from the cooler. "Boston Alex is intimidating. Beach Alex I can actually talk to." There was truth in her teasing. I had created different versions of myself for different contexts. The sharp, analytical finance executive, the reserved, guarded family member, the carefully controlled social acquaintance. Here, with the boundaries between those contexts blurring, I was discovering there might be freedom in integration rather than compartmentalization. Dinner that evening was a chaotic affair, everyone contributing something to the meal. My father, grilling steaks with excessive attention to their doneness, my mother preparing her famous potato salad, Chloe experimenting with a spicy mango salsa that the adults loved and the children universally rejected. Wine flowed freely among the adults, stories and laughter growing louder as the evening progressed. As twilight settled over the beach, someone suggested a bonfire. Soon we were all gathered around crackling flames, the younger children roasting. Marshmallows for s'mores while the teenagers huddled slightly apart, attempting to maintain their cool distance, but still clearly enjoying themselves. My father, relaxed after several beers, began telling stories from our childhood. Many I remembered, some I'd forgotten, a few that seemed new entirely. "Remember the summer Alex decided to start a neighborhood newspaper?" he asked, chuckling at the memory. "Must have been, 12 years old? Recruited all the neighborhood kids as reporters. The Millfield Messenger," I recalled, surprised by the clarity of the memory. "We sold it for 25 cents a copy. And you made quite a profit, as I recall," my mother added. "Always the businessman, even then." "Whatever happened to that?" Marcus asked. "It ran for the whole summer, didn't it?" I nodded, the details returning. "Until school started again. Mrs. Abernathy from 3 streets over was our biggest supporter. She bought 5 copies every week, said she needed extras to send to her sister in Florida." "She just wanted to support you kids," my mother said. "She told me once she never actually read them, just wanted to encourage the initiative." We all laughed, and the conversation flowed to other childhood adventures. The treehouse Marcus and I had built that collapsed the first time we both climbed into it. The talent show where Chloe had forgotten her lines, but improvised a dance instead. Jenna's brief career as a neighborhood pet sitter that ended when Mrs. Peterson's cat escaped on her watch. These shared memories, once painful reminders of what I'd lost or left behind, now felt like threads being rewoven into the fabric of my identity. I had been that child, part of this family, before ambition and distance and hurt had separated us. Perhaps I could be part of it again, in a new way. As the fire burned lower and the youngest children began nodding off in their parents' laps, I found myself next to my father, both of us gazing into the embers. "Good day," he said simply. "Very good day," I agreed. "You know," he said after a moment, "your mother and I worry about you sometimes, all alone in that big city." In the past, such a comment would have triggered immediate defensiveness, assumptions about their lack of understanding, their small-town mindset, their inability to comprehend my choices. Now, I heard the concern beneath the words. "I'm not alone," I assured him. "I have friends, colleagues, a life I've built." "I know that," he nodded. "But there's friends, and then there's family. People who have to love you even when you're being an idiot. I laughed softly. Is that the official definition of family? One of 'em, he replied, the corner of his mouth lifting. Along with people who drive you crazy, but you love anyway. We sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the fire die down to glowing coals. I'm glad you're here, son, he said finally, reaching over to clasp my shoulder briefly. Means a lot to all of us. The simple statement, offered without drama or excessive emotion in my father's characteristic straightforward manner, affected me more deeply than any elaborate apology could have. We were healing, slowly but surely, finding our way back to each other through ordinary moments like this one. The week unfolded in a similar pattern of beach days, family meals, and evening gatherings. There were minor conflicts, of course. Siblings can't spend extended time together without occasional friction, regardless of age. Marcus and I had a tense moment over the correct way to secure the kayaks after use. Jenna got snippy when Chloe borrowed her favorite cover-up without asking. My mother and father had a whispered but heated discussion about whether the grandchildren were wearing enough sunscreen. But these moments passed quickly, resolved through apologies or simply the distraction of the next activity. No one held grudges. No one retreated into prolonged silence. No one used past hurts as ammunition in current disagreements. It was, I realized with some surprise, how healthy families managed conflict, acknowledging it, addressing it, then moving forward. Midway through the week, I received an urgent email from the office regarding a potential problem with a major client. In the past, I would have immediately made my excuses and returned to Boston, prioritizing work above all else. Now, I found myself considering alternatives. Everything okay? Chloe asked, noticing my frown as I read the email on my phone. Work issue, I replied. Might need to handle a call later. Anything serious? I considered the situation objectively. Nothing that can't wait a few hours. The team can start gathering information, and I'll join a call this evening. She looked surprised, but pleased. Look at you, setting boundaries. Boston Alex would have been in the car already. Maybe Boston Alex is evolving, I suggested. That evening, while the rest of the family was playing an increasingly competitive game of charades in the living room, I stepped out onto the quieter upper deck for my conference call. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in dramatic oranges and pinks as I walked the team through potential solutions to the client situation. When the call ended, I remained on the deck, watching the colors deepen and fade as twilight settled over the ocean. I could hear my family through the open windows, exclamations of triumph, good-natured accusations of cheating, Chloe's distinctive laugh rising above the general din. Marcus joined me a few minutes later, offering a beer as he leaned against the railing beside me. Crisis averted? He asked. Managed, I nodded. Not a crisis, really. Just needed some direction. Must be important what you do, he observed. Real responsibility. There was no resentment or judgment in his tone, just genuine curiosity. 5 years ago, such a comment would have seemed loaded with implications about my priorities, my absence, my different choices. Now it was simply a question, an opening for connection rather than comparison. It has its moments, I acknowledged. But honestly, a lot of it is just meetings that could have been emails. He laughed. Sounds like my supplier consultations. 2 hours to hear information I could have read in 5 minutes. We fell into a surprisingly easy conversation about our respective work challenges, his struggles with unreliable subcontractors matching, my frustrations with inconsistent analysts, his permit delays paralleling my regulatory hurdles. Different worlds, same problems, he concluded, finishing his beer. Maybe not such different worlds after all, I suggested. He considered this, nodding slowly. Maybe not. By the week's end, I found myself surprisingly reluctant to leave. The thought of returning to my pristine apartment with its perfect silence and empty rooms no longer held the appeal it once had. I'd grown accustomed to the constant background noise of family life, children's footsteps overhead, multiple conversations happening simultaneously, the clatter of dishes being washed, music playing somewhere in the distance. As I packed my car on the final morning, Tyler approached, shuffling his feet in the way that signaled he had something to say but wasn't sure how to begin. "What's up?" I prompted, closing the trunk. "I was thinking," he started, then paused, gathering courage. "Maybe I could come visit you in Boston sometime? Maybe see a Bruins game or something?" The request, offered with the vulnerability only a 13-year-old trying to appear casual can achieve, touched me deeply. "I'd like that," I said, careful to match his attempt at nonchalance. "We could check out the Science Museum too if you wanted. They have this technology exhibit that's pretty cool." His face brightened. "For real? That would be awesome." "I'll talk to your parents about dates," I promised. "Maybe during your school break in October?" He nodded enthusiastically before seeming to remember his teenage dignity. "Cool. That's cool." As he sauntered back toward the house, trying and failing to hide his excitement, I felt a surge of something that took me a moment to identify. Not just happiness, but purpose. Being Uncle Alex meant something to this kid. It mattered. The family gathered for a final group photo on the beach before departure. Everyone squinting in the morning sun, hair tousled by the sea breeze. My mother insisted on multiple shots to make sure we get one with everyone smiling, though the likelihood of capturing 12 people of various ages all looking good simultaneously seemed slim. To my surprise, when she showed me the results, there we all were, sunburned, wind-blown, but undeniably happy, standing together on the sand with the ocean stretching behind us. A physical record of reconciliation, of bridges rebuilt, of family reclaimed. "Send that to me?" I requested, realizing as I said it that it would be the first family photo I'd displayed in my apartment in years. The drive back to Boston gave me time to reflect on the week and what it meant for my future. The family vacation would become an annual tradition, my mother had declared, already discussing possible locations for next summer. I had standing invitations to visit each of my siblings, specific plans for Tyler's October stay, and a promise to help Chloe install her upcoming gallery show in September. My calendar, once filled exclusively with work commitments and the occasional obligatory social event, would now need to accommodate family as well. The prospect felt not like a burden, but a balancing, a restoration of something essential I had been missing. Arriving home, I entered my apartment with fresh eyes. The space that had once represented achievement and independence now seemed strangely impersonal, a high-end hotel suite rather than a home. The carefully curated artwork, the designer furniture, the strategic lighting, all chosen to create an impression rather than comfort. Within days, I had made small but significant changes. The family photo from the beach was framed and placed prominently on my mantel. The spare bedroom, previously used only for storage, was cleared out and furnished with an actual bed and linens in preparation for Tyler's visit. The gallery wall in my dining area now included one of Chloe's paintings, alongside the more expensive pieces I'd collected. These physical changes reflected the internal shifts happening more gradually, the lowering of defenses, the willingness to be vulnerable again, the recognition that the safe, controlled life I had built was also a limited one. Work remained. Important, of course. I still excelled at what I did, still found satisfaction in successful deals and strategic decisions. But increasingly, I found myself setting boundaries that would have been unthinkable before, declining non-essential evening events, protecting my weekends when possible, even suggesting to Diane that we explore the possibility of remote work for certain days to reduce the constant in-office presence that had been my norm. "Are you feeling all right?" she asked, half joking, when I mentioned taking a full weekend off for the first time in months. Should I be concerned? "I'm fine," I assured her, Just reprioritizing some things. Her expression softened into something like approval. About time, if you don't mind my saying so. September brought Chloe's gallery opening, her first major show in Boston. I invited several clients who collected contemporary art, leveraging my professional network to ensure a good turnout. The gallery was crowded on opening night, Chloe's vibrant abstract landscapes drawing genuine interest, and more importantly, sales. "Your sister is remarkably talented," commented Catherine, a venture capitalist I'd been dating casually since July. "These pieces have such emotion in them." "She always could express feelings better than the rest of us," I agreed, watching as Chloe charmed a potential buyer across the room. "It's in her DNA." "And what's in your DNA?" Catherine asked, studying me with interest. I considered the question. "Caution historically, self-protection, but I'm working on expanding the repertoire." She smiled, intrigued. "That sounds promising." Later that evening, after most guests had departed and Chloe was celebrating her successful debut with a small group of friends and family, she pulled me aside for a tearful hug. "I couldn't have done this without you," she insisted. "Of course you could have," I countered. "Your work speaks for itself." She shook her head. "Not just the introductions, though those were huge. I meant being here, being my brother again, believing in me. It matters, Alex." I understood then something I had missed during my years of self-imposed exile. That my absence had created a void not just in my life but in theirs. That by protecting myself from potential rejection, I had also withheld something they valued, something that couldn't be replaced by financial support alone. My presence, my belief, my place in the family constellation. October brought Tyler's visit 4 days during his school break that transformed my apartment from a showcase into a lived-in space. We attended a Bruins game where he proudly wore the jersey I'd given him, explored the Science Museum where his genuine fascination with the technology exhibits reminded me of my own childhood interests, and spent an evening attempting to recreate my mother's lasagna recipe with mixed results but much laughter. On his final evening, as we sat watching a movie he'd selected, an action film with more explosions than plot, but I found I didn't mind, he asked a question that caught me off guard. "Why didn't you visit us before, when I was little?" I paused the movie, recognizing the importance of the moment. Tyler was old enough to have noticed my absence during his early childhood, old enough now to deserve an honest answer. "It's complicated," I began, then stopped myself. "No, that's not fair. The truth is, your dad and I, and the whole family really, we went through a rough patch. We didn't handle things well when I moved away." "You guys fought?" "Not exactly fought. More like drifted apart, stopped making the effort to stay connected." He considered this with the seriousness only teenagers can bring to family dynamics. "But you're okay now, right?" "We're working on it," I said honestly. "Getting better all the time." He nodded, accepting this. "Good. Because my dad says you're the smartest person he knows, and I need help with algebra this year." The casual comment, the revelation that Marcus had spoken positively about me to his son even during the years of estrangement, was yet another piece of the complex puzzle I was assembling about those lost years. "Algebra, I can definitely help with," I promised, unpausing the movie and letting the conversation shift to safer territory. When I drove Tyler to the train station to meet Marcus, who would accompany him home, I was surprised by the tightness in my throat as we said goodbye. "This was awesome, Uncle Alex," he said, with the understated enthusiasm of early adolescence. "Thanks for everything." "Anytime," I replied, meaning it completely. "My home is always open to you." Home. The word had slipped out naturally, but it registered as significant. My apartment had always been my place, my condo, sometimes even my investment property, when I was being particularly analytical about it. Never home. That word had been reserved for the house in Millfield where I grew up, a place I had distanced myself from physically and emotionally. But perhaps home wasn't about location. Perhaps it was about connection, about belonging, about the people who made a space meaningful rather than simply functional. Marcus arrived, greeting me with the casual ease that was slowly becoming our new normal. As Tyler excitedly recounted highlights of his visit, I caught my brother watching me with a thoughtful expression. "What?" I asked during a pause in Tyler's narrative. "Nothing," Marcus shook his head. "Just, it's good to see you with him. You're good with him." The simple compliment, offered without agenda or expectation, meant more than any professional accolade I'd received in recent memory. As the holidays approached again, marking nearly a year since the tentative reconciliation had begun, I found myself anticipating rather than dreading the family gathering. Thanksgiving would be at my parents' house as usual, but Christmas would be different this year, hosted at my apartment in Boston, my first time welcoming the entire family into my space. The logistics were daunting. My 2-bedroom apartment, spacious for one person, would be crowded with 4 siblings, their spouses, 7 children ranging from toddler to teen, and my parents. Hotel rooms were reserved for overnight stays, but the main celebrations would be centered in my home. Preparations consumed my free time in the weeks leading up to Christmas. I purchased a tree far larger than I would have chosen for myself, remembering my mother's insistence on full branches. For optimal ornament display, I ordered a dining table that could be expanded to seat everyone, replacing my sleek glass piece that seated 4 at most. I stocked up on the specific snacks each niece and nephew preferred, information gathered through careful questioning of their parents. The transformation of my space mirrored the ongoing transformation in myself, less controlled, more accommodating, designed for connection rather than impression. When my family arrived in waves on Christmas Eve, their reactions to my apartment were gratifyingly positive. "This view!" my mother exclaimed, drawn immediately to the windows overlooking the harbor. "No wonder you love it here." My father examined the built-in bookshelves with appreciation. "Solid craftsmanship," he noted, running a hand along the wood. "Not that prefabricated stuff." The children were less interested in architectural features, quickly discovering that the hallway made an excellent racing track, and the kitchen island was perfectly sized for hiding beneath during improvised games of seek and find. Dinner was served buffet-style, everyone finding places throughout the open-concept living area, some at the new dining table, others at the kitchen counter, the youngest children at a small table set up specifically for them. The noise level rose steadily as wine was poured for the adults and excitement built among the children for the next day's festivities. After dinner, as tradition dictated, we gathered in the living room to exchange one gift each. I had transformed. My usual minimalist decor with twinkling lights, evergreen garlands, and the oversized tree now surrounded by an overwhelming number of wrapped packages. As presents were distributed and exclaimed over, I found myself watching my family with a sense of wonder. They fit here, in this space I had created as a fortress against loneliness. Their presence didn't diminish it, but somehow expanded it, filled it with the energy and connection that sleek furnishings and perfect order could never provide. My gift from Jenna was a custom photo album, similar to Chloe's from the previous year, but focused on the recent months of reconnection. Photos from the beach vacation, Tyler's visit, family dinners, casual moments captured without my awareness. The final page held a family portrait taken at Thanksgiving, professional and formal, all of us arranged in coordinated outfits against a backdrop of autumn leaves. "We thought you might like an updated version for your desk at work," Jenna explained. "Show off that handsome family of yours to all those fancy colleagues." The thought of displaying family photos at work, integrating that part of my identity into my professional persona, would have been uncomfortable a year ago. Now it felt right, an acknowledgement of wholeness rather than compartmentalization. "It's perfect," I told her sincerely. "Thank you." As the evening wound down and families departed for their hotels, promising to return early for Christmas morning festivities, I found myself alone with my parents, who would be staying in my guest room. "Need help tidying up?" my mother offered, already gathering discarded wrapping paper despite my protests. "Leave it, Mom. We can deal with it tomorrow." "Won't take but a minute," she insisted, in the mother-knows-best tone that hadn't changed since my childhood. My father chuckled, settling into an armchair with a glass of whiskey. "No use arguing with her when she's in cleanup mode. Been trying. For 40 years. I conceded the point, helping her straighten up while my father watched contentedly. "You've made a good life here, Alex," he commented, looking around the apartment with appreciation. "We're proud of what you've accomplished." The simple statement, offered without qualification, settled something in me that had been restless for years, the unacknowledged hunger for parental approval that had partly driven my ambition while simultaneously being dismissed as unimportant. "Thanks, Dad," I said, accepting both the compliment and what it represented, a recognition of my choices as valid even when different from their own. My mother joined us, her tidying complete to her satisfaction. "This is a lovely home," she said, emphasis on the word that had been in my own thoughts earlier. "It suits you." "It's starting to," I agreed, "though it's better with all of you in it." Her eyes softened. "That's how homes are supposed to be. Better with family in them." We sat together in comfortable silence for a moment, the harbor lights twinkling beyond the windows, the Christmas tree glowing in the corner, the subtle but unmistakable sense of rightness settling over us. "I've been thinking," I said finally, an idea that had been forming for months finally crystallizing, "about making some changes." "What kind of changes?" my father asked, interest piqued. "Professional ones, mainly. I've been with the same firm for 8 years. Done well there, but I'm starting to feel limited." "You're thinking of leaving?" My mother sounded concerned. "In this economy?" I smiled at her immediate worry, so characteristic of her generation. "Not leaving without a plan. Actually, I've had an offer. From a smaller firm, but one with a different focus. More emphasis on sustainable investment, community development, less pure profit, more social impact." My father raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like quite a shift." "It would be," I acknowledged. "Lower base salary, but better profit-sharing potential. More autonomy, more alignment with values I'm finding increasingly important." "You've always been driven," my mother observed, "but it matters what you're driven toward." Her insight, as was often the case, cut straight to the heart of the matter. My ambition hadn't diminished, but its focus was evolving, from personal advancement and security toward meaning and connection. "There's something else," I continued, the second part of my potential plan harder to articulate. "The new position would allow more flexibility in terms of location. I could work remotely part of the time." My father's eyes sharpened with understanding. "You thinking of spending more time in Millfield?" "Not exactly in Millfield," I clarified, "but I've been looking at properties on the lakes, about 30 minutes from town. Places with enough room for visitors, weekend gatherings." The idea had begun forming during the beach vacation. The value of a space specifically designed for family connection, a neutral territory that wasn't my urban apartment or the childhood home in Millfield with all its complex associations. "That sounds wonderful," my mother said softly, "to have you closer, even part-time." We discussed the possibilities further, practical considerations about commuting, tax implications, how such a significant change might affect my career trajectory long-term. But underlying the practical conversation was a deeper current of understanding that I was reorienting my life to create space for what had been missing, to balance achievement with belonging. When I finally showed them to the guest room, prepared with my mother's preferred extra pillows and my father's specific type of reading light, I felt a sense of peace that had been elusive for too long. The future held uncertainty, as futures always do, but the direction was clear, toward integration rather than separation, connection rather than protection. Christmas morning arrived with the chaotic energy only children anticipating presents can generate. By 8, my apartment was filled again, coffee brewing continuously as adults attempted to keep pace with the excitement around them. The gift. Opening took over an hour, wrapping paper creating drifts across my usually spotless floors, exclamations and thanks overlapping into a happy cacophony. I had been deliberate in my gift choices, selecting items that reflected genuine knowledge of each family member's interests and needs, books chosen for specific tastes rather than impressive titles, experiences rather than objects where possible. For my parents, the most significant gift was last, a framed architectural rendering of the lake house I was considering, along with a note explaining that their input on the final design would be welcome since I hoped it would become a gathering place for all of us. My mother's tears and my father's gruff embrace confirmed that the gesture had conveyed what I intended. Not just that I was considering a physical move closer to them, but that I was committing to remaining emotionally close as well. That the healing of the past year was not temporary but foundational. As the day progressed into Christmas dinner, catered at Jenna's insistence that I shouldn't have to cook for everyone, I found myself in conversation with Marcus on my balcony, bundled, against the December chill but appreciating the moment of relative quiet. "You seem different," he observed, not for the first time in recent months. "Settled somehow." "I feel different," I acknowledged. "More integrated." He nodded as if this made perfect sense. "You were always the one with the clearest direction. Even as kids, you knew exactly what you wanted. The rest of us were just trying to figure it out day by day." "I thought I knew what I wanted," I corrected. "Success, security, recognition. But it turns out those things aren't very satisfying without people to share them with." "And now?" I considered the question seriously. "Now I'm learning that it doesn't have to be either or. I don't have to choose between professional success and family connection, between independence and belonging. It's about balance, not sacrifice." Marcus smiled, a genuine expression without the edge of competition that had often characterized our interactions in the past. "Well, whatever you're figuring out, it looks good on you. You're easier to be around." Coming from my straight-talking brother, this was high praise indeed. "Thanks," I said simply. "It feels good too." We rejoined the gathering inside, where Chloe was organizing an impromptu talent show featuring the children and any adults brave enough to participate. The rest of the day passed in a blur of laughter, food, and the kind of unstructured togetherness that can't be planned but emerges when people are comfortable enough to simply be themselves together. As the families departed that evening, the goodbyes were easier than in the past, softened by specific plans for future gatherings. Tyler would return for another visit during spring break. I would attend Emma and Ethan's school play in February. The whole family would gather at a ski resort for a long weekend in March, a mini vacation to bridge the gap between Christmas and the summer beach trip. By the time my apartment was quiet again, empty of guests but filled with evidence of their presence, forgotten toys, a scarf draped over a chair, the lingering scent of my mother's perfume, I felt the familiar mix of relief at the return to peace and a new growing appreciation for the chaos that family brings. My phone pinged with messages as everyone arrived safely at their destinations. My mother reporting that they were home with an invitation to Sunday dinner whenever I could make it. Jenna sending a photo of the twins fast asleep in the car still. Wearing their holiday outfits, Chloe thanking me again for hosting with a row of heart emojis. The last message was from Marcus, a simple text that brought a smile. "Tyler's already planning what you'll do on his next visit. Hope you're ready for more teenage energy. Thanks for everything, brother." Brother, a simple word, an acknowledgement. of connection that transcended the complexities of our past relationship, the years of distance, the different paths we had chosen. I stood at my windows, looking out at the harbor lights reflecting on the dark water. Below, the city continued its rhythms, cars moving along streets, windows illuminated in other buildings, lives intersecting briefly or significantly. I had chosen this view, this lifestyle, this career path, and I didn't regret it. But I had come to understand that choices don't have to be permanent, that paths can converge after diverging, that what seems like an ending can sometimes be a new beginning. The holidays were over, and I had found my place at the table, not by denying who I had become or pretending the hurt had never happened, but by creating space for both growth and reconciliation, for both independence and connection. It hadn't been easy. There were still moments of doubt, flashes of old resentments, the occasional misstep as we all learned how to be family to each other again, in new, more mature ways. But the effort was worth it. The vulnerability was worth it. The openness to possibility after years of hurt continued to feel like its own kind of victory. As I turned from the window, my gaze fell on Chloe's photo album, open to a page of beach images. All of us together on the sand, squinting in the sun, genuinely happy. Beside it lay the architectural plans for the lake house, a tangible symbol of commitment to making space for this newly reclaimed family in my future. The journey wasn't complete. Perhaps it never would be. Family relationships evolve continuously, requiring ongoing attention, forgiveness, accommodation. But I had learned that the table can expand to include all of us, that there is strength in accepting help as well as giving it, that sometimes the greatest gift is simply showing up, being present, remaining open to connection even when it feels risky. My family had excluded me from holiday gatherings, then called when they needed financial help. But what had begun as transactional had transformed into something authentic. The money had been a bridge, perhaps, but we had all chosen to cross it, to meet in the middle, to build something new together on the foundation of shared history and renewed commitment. As I closed the photo album and prepared for bed on that Christmas night, I felt a profound gratitude for second chances, for the opportunity to rewrite endings, to heal old wounds, to discover that it's never too late to find your way home. Especially when home turns out to be not a place, but the people who know you at your worst and choose to love you anyway. The new year arrived with fresh energy and purpose. I had accepted the position with the smaller, more values-aligned firm, negotiating a transition period that allowed me to wrap up ongoing projects and introduce clients to my successor. The news was met with surprise by many colleagues who had viewed me as firmly established in the corporate hierarchy, but those who knew me best expressed understanding. "I always sensed you were looking for something more meaningful," commented Richard, a longtime client who chose to follow me to the new firm. "The numbers were never just numbers to you. It was an insightful observation about something I hadn't fully recognized in myself, that even in my most ambitious phases, I had cared about the impact of financial decisions beyond their profitability." The new position would allow that aspect of my approach to move from secondary consideration to central focus. The lake house became a reality in early spring, not the sleek modern design I might have chosen years earlier, but a spacious cedar and stone structure with multiple bedrooms, a great room designed for gatherings, and a wraparound deck overlooking the water. My parents had indeed provided input, as had my siblings, making the process of creation collaborative rather than solitary. I maintained my apartment in Boston, but found myself spending 3 or 4 days each week at the lake, especially as summer approached. The commute to the city was manageable, and technology made remote work increasingly seamless. The rhythm of splitting my time between urban energy and lakeside tranquility suited me in ways I hadn't anticipated. The first family gathering at the lake house occurred in June, a weekend celebration of my father's retirement that brought everyone together in the new space. Watching my family move through rooms I had created specifically with them in mind was deeply satisfying. My father immediately claiming the fishing dock, my mother rearranging kitchen cabinets to her liking, the children discovering the hidden reading nook under the stairs, Chloe setting up an easel on the deck to capture the sunset. "This place is incredible, Alex," Jenna said, joining me by the fire pit as evening approached. "It feels like it's been here forever somehow." "That's what I was hoping for," I acknowledged. "Something that would feel established, rooted. Not just a vacation house, but another home." "Mission accomplished," she assured me, accepting the glass of wine I offered. "The kids are already calling it Lake Home, to distinguish it from regular home." That simple designation, not Uncle Alex's place, but Lake Home, conveyed exactly the sense of shared ownership I had hoped to create. This wasn't just my property that they visited. It was a space that belonged to all of us in some essential way, a physical manifestation of our reconnection. As summer progressed, the lake house became a natural gathering point. Sometimes planned, with the entire family converging for a weekend, but often spontaneous. Marcus dropping by with Tyler for fishing, Chloe arriving unannounced with art, supplies and staying for days, my parents making it a regular Sunday destination. The flexible schedule of my new position allowed me to be present for these visits in a way my previous career would not have permitted. I found myself prioritizing family events that once would have been sacrificed to work commitments without a second thought. The quarterly projections could wait. Tyler's first catch of a sizable base could not. This shift in priorities wasn't without challenges. There were still moments when the old work patterns beckoned. The adrenaline rush of closing major deals, the clear metrics of success, the identity I had built around professional achievement. But increasingly, these were balanced by new sources of satisfaction. The relationships deepening around me, the community I was building, the integration of parts of myself that had been compartmentalized for too long. By August, when the second annual family beach vacation arrived, I found myself in a very different position than the previous year. No longer the tentative returnee testing the waters of reconciliation, I was now firmly re-established in the family structure. Uncle Alex, who could be counted on for adventure and advice, brother who remembered birthdays and showed up for important moments, son who called regularly just to check in. The beach house we rented this year was on the same stretch of Cape Cod shoreline but larger to accommodate the growing family. Jenna had announced she was expecting another baby in January, a surprise addition that had been welcomed with joy by everyone. "You're going to need to add another bedroom to the lake house," she joked one evening as we sat on the deck watching the sunset. "Already in the plans," I replied, surprising her. "The unfinished space above the garage. I was thinking of making it a bunk room for all the kids eventually, but it could be a nursery first." She looked at me with genuine emotion. "You really are all in on this family thing now, aren't you?" I considered the question, recognizing its significance. "I am," I confirmed. "Took me long enough to figure out what matters, but yes, I'm all in." She leaned against my shoulder in a gesture of affection. "We're lucky to have you back." I missed my big brother more than I realized. These moments of explicit acknowledgement of our past estrangement and current reconciliation still came occasionally, important touchstones in the healing process. But they were becoming less frequent, less necessary, as our renewed relationship solidified into something that no longer required constant affirmation to feel secure. The vacation unfolded with the comfortable familiarity of tradition, despite being only our second year. Beach days, group meals, evening bonfires. The rhythms established the previous summer continued, but with a deeper ease, less effort required to navigate the emotional undercurrents. On our final evening, as we gathered for a farewell dinner, at the house, my mother stood to make a toast, glass raised toward the assembled family. "To connections re-established," she began, her gaze meeting mine across the table. "To family finding its way back to each other. And to new beginnings." She nodded toward Jenna's still barely visible pregnancy. May we never again take for granted what we have in each other. The simple toast, acknowledging both the painful past and the hopeful future, brought unexpected emotion to the surface. I found myself blinking back tears as glasses clinked around the table, murmurs of agreement rising from everyone. Later, as dishes were being cleared and children corralled for bed, my father found me on the deck, gazing out at the darkening ocean. Good toast, he commented, joining me at the railing. Mom always had a way with words, I agreed. She revised it about 15 times this afternoon, he revealed with a chuckle. Wanted to get it just right. The thought of my mother laboring over the brief statement, understanding its importance to all of us, warmed me further. I've been meaning to ask you something, my father continued after a moment. That financial committee you joined for the Historical Society, how's that going? It's going well, I replied, somewhat surprised by the question. We're making progress on the restoration fundraising. Why do you ask? He hesitated, uncharacteristically tentative. The Community Center Board has an opening. Finance oversight position. Voluntary, of course, but important work. They're looking for someone with expertise. He cleared his throat. I might have mentioned your name. The offer, for that's what it was, beneath the casual presentation, represented another thread being woven between my current life and my hometown, another connection being reestablished. I'd be interested, I said, watching his expression shift to pleased surprise. Would need to look at the time commitment, but yes, it sounds worthwhile. His hand landed briefly on my shoulder, a gesture of approval and affection that spoke volumes from a man who had always been sparing with physical demonstrations of emotion. They'd be lucky to have you, he said simply. Returning to the lake house after the beach vacation, I found myself increasingly comfortable with the dual nature of my life. The professional accomplishment and urban sophistication of Boston, balanced by the community connections and family ties of my more rural existence. What had once seemed like incompatible worlds were revealing themselves as complementary aspects of a more authentic whole. September brought a milestone I had been anticipating with mixed emotions, my parents' 40th anniversary. The celebration had been in planning for months, a surprise gathering at their favorite restaurant in Millfield organized primarily by Jenna, with all of us contributing elements. As the date approached, I found myself reflecting on their marriage, viewing it, now through adult eyes rather than a child's perspective. They had weathered economic uncertainties, health scares, the challenges of raising 4 very different children, and their own evolving relationship, all while maintaining a partnership that, while not perfect, had remained fundamentally sound. For their gift, I had struggled to find something meaningful beyond the material. Finally, inspiration struck in the form of their early history, a courtship that had begun at a dance hall in the neighboring town, a venue long since closed but significant in their personal narrative. Working with a local artist, recommended by Chloe, I commissioned a painting of the dance hall based on old photographs, a visual reminder of where their story together had begun. The piece would be the centerpiece of our gift as siblings. Jenna had written a commemorative poem to accompany it. Marcus had crafted a custom frame from wood salvaged from the actual building before its demolition years ago. And Chloe had created a companion piece showing the dance hall in its current state, transformed into a community garden but recognizable in its bones. The evening of the celebration, watching my parents' genuine surprise and emotion as they entered the restaurant to find friends and family gathered, I felt a profound gratitude for the example they had set, not of perfect relationship, but of committed one, of choosing each other repeatedly through changing circumstances and challenges. You orchestrated this, didn't you? My mother accused me during a quiet moment, eyes still bright with happy tears. Team effort, I corrected. Jenna was the mastermind. I just handled logistics and financing. She shook her head, unconvinced. I see your hand in the details. The music selection, the menu choices. She squeezed my arm. You remember things. You always did, even as a child. The small preferences, the passing comments. It's a gift. Her observation brought me back to Christmas and my father's surprise that I had remembered his mention of specific fishing lures. Perhaps this attention to detail, this storing away of others' preferences and histories, had always been part of who I was, a way of connecting and caring that had been redirected into professional skills during my years of emotional distance, but was now finding its original purpose again. Happy anniversary, Mom, I said simply, accepting the insight with a nod. You and Dad deserve all of this and more. As fall deepened, bringing spectacular color to the trees surrounding the lake house, I settled into a rhythm that increasingly felt like the right balance for me. 4 days each week in Boston, immersed in the work that still challenged and engaged me, but no longer defined me completely. 3 days at the lake, sometimes alone with books and thoughts, sometimes surrounded by family in various configurations, sometimes engaged in the community activities that were gradually weaving me back into the social fabric of the area. I joined the community center board as my father had suggested, finding unexpected satisfaction in applying my financial expertise to local needs. I began mentoring a high school student interested in business, a connection made through the career day I had impulsively volunteered for when visiting Tyler's school. I even found myself occasionally attending the small, non-denominational church my parents had always frequented, drawn not by religious conviction, but by the sense of community and tradition it represented. None of these activities would have fit my self-image a year earlier. All of them now felt like natural expressions of a more integrated identity, not defined solely by professional achievement or family role or community involvement, but by the intersection of all these aspects. October brought Tyler for his now regular school break visit, this time with the addition of his cousin Emma, who at 9 had developed a total obsession with the city, according to Jenna. Having 2 children in my apartment presented new logistical challenges, but also unexpected pleasures. Tyler, now 14 and increasingly independent, took pride in showing Emma his favorite spots from previous visits and adopting a protective older cousin role that mimicked his father's approach to his younger siblings. Emma brought a different energy, curious, verbal, constantly observing and commenting. On our second day, as we explored the public garden, she slipped her small hand into mine with natural trust. Uncle Alex, she began, in the tone that signaled a significant question forming. Do you ever get lonely in your apartment all by yourself? The directness of children never failed to surprise me, cutting through social niceties to essential matters. Sometimes, I answered honestly. That's partly why I got the lake house, to have more family around more often. She considered this with a seriousness beyond her years. But you could just get married and have your own kids. Then, you'd never be lonely. Tyler, walking ahead of us, snorted without turning. Smooth, Emma. Real subtle. I laughed, recognizing the question as likely originating from adult conversation Emma had overheard. Is that something your mom thinks I should do? Emma's guileless expression confirmed my suspicion. She told Daddy that you'd make a great husband and father if you'd just get out of your own way, whatever that means. Out of my own way, I repeated, amused by Jenna's amateur psychoanalysis but acknowledging its potential accuracy. Well, these things happen in their own time, Emma. But you are dating someone, right? Tyler asked, circling back to join the conversation. Mom said you brought someone to Aunt Chloe's gallery thing. The casual inquiry into my personal life, the assumption that they had a right to this information, an interest in my happiness beyond what I could provide them, was still novel enough to give me pause. I've been seeing someone, I acknowledged. Catherine? She's nice. It's still fairly new. Is it serious? Tyler pressed, with the bluntness of adolescence. I considered the question. Catherine and I had been dating for several months, enjoying each other's company, discovering shared interests beyond our initial professional connection. But had it progressed to serious yet? We're getting to know each other, I hedged. These things take time to figure out. Emma, bored with relationship talk, had spotted the swan boats and was tugging me in that direction. Tyler rolled his eyes at my non-answer but let the subject drop, distracted by a street performer setting up nearby. That evening, after the children were asleep in the guest room they were sharing with minimal complaints, I found myself thinking about Emma's question and my own response. Was loneliness still a significant factor in my life? The intense isolation I had felt a year ago had certainly abated, filled now with family connections, deepening friendships, community involvement. But there remained a space for partnership, for the specific intimacy of romantic relationship that family ties, no matter how strong, couldn't replace. Catherine was intelligent, successful in her own right, appreciative of both my professional drive and my evolving priorities. We enjoyed similar cultural activities, could discuss ideas at the same level, found each other physically attractive. By any objective measure, the relationship had potential, yet I recognized in myself a persistent hesitation, a holding back, that had characterized my romantic relationships for years. The walls I had built against family rejection had affected all my attachments, creating a pattern of maintaining emotional distance, of keeping escape routes clear. As I considered this pattern in the quiet of my apartment, the children's steady, breathing audible from the guest room, I wondered if Emma's innocent question had identified a truth I had been avoiding. That loneliness was a choice I was making, not a circumstance imposed upon me. The insight followed me through the remainder of Tyler and Emma's visit and into the following weeks as autumn deepened toward winter. I found myself paying closer attention to my interactions with Catherine, noticing the moments when I defaulted to guardedness, when I steered conversations away from greater vulnerability, when I maintained space that could have been bridged. "You're different lately," she observed over dinner at my apartment in early November. "More thoughtful, or maybe just more present." "Good different, or concerning different?" I asked. "Good, I think," she smiled. "Like you're fully here, not keeping part of yourself in reserve." Her perception was accurate. I had been making a conscious effort to be more present, more open, to allow the relationship to develop without the automatic protections I had relied on for so long. "I'm trying something new," I acknowledged. Being more available. "I like it," she said simply, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I like you, Alex. The real you, not just the polished professional version." The comment echoed what my family had been discovering, that the person beneath the successful, controlled exterior was worth knowing, worth connecting with. That the walls I had built for protection had also prevented genuine intimacy, genuine knowing. As Thanksgiving approached, marking a full year since the tentative reconciliation with my family had begun, I found myself at a natural point of reflection. The changes in my life over that year were both subtle and profound, a shift in priorities, in self-definition, in openness to connection across multiple domains. The holiday itself would be at my parents' house, as always, but with a new element. I had invited Catherine to join us, a step I would not have contemplated a year earlier. Introducing a romantic partner to my family would have seemed too risky, too revealing, too committed. Now it felt natural, an integration of the different aspects of my life. "Are you sure about this?" Catherine asked when I extended the invitation. "Meeting the entire family at once is a bit of a trial by fire." "They're not so intimidating," I assured her, smiling at how my perception had shifted. "A bit chaotic, definitely nosy, but fundamentally good people." "That's not what concerns me," she said, studying me with her characteristic directness. "It's more about what it means. Bringing someone to family holiday gatherings is a statement." Her perception was accurate, as usual. It was a statement about my increasing comfort with vulnerability, with letting people in, with the possibility of a future that included partnership alongside all the other connections I was rebuilding. "I know," I acknowledged. "I'm okay with that statement if you are." Her slow smile was answer enough. Thanksgiving Day arrived clear and cold, the kind of crisp New England fall day that seems designed for homecomings. Driving to Millfield with Catherine beside me, I found myself describing family members, explaining in jokes, preparing her for the experience ahead. "Your brother Marcus sounds a lot like my older brother," she commented after a particularly revealing anecdote. "Practical, straightforward, secretly soft-hearted beneath the tough exterior." "That's Marcus exactly," I agreed, pleased by her insight. "You'll probably get along well." "And Chloe is the artistic free spirit, Jenna the organized nurturer, your father the stoic provider, your mother the emotional center," she summarized. "A classic American family in many ways." "I never thought of us as typical," I admitted. "But I suppose in the broad strokes we follow some familiar patterns." "Every family does," she said. "It's the specific dynamics, the particular histories that make each one unique." She paused, looking out at the passing landscape. "Thank you for sharing yours with me. I know it hasn't been simple for you." Her understanding of what this invitation represented, the trust involved, the vulnerability, was yet another confirmation that the relationship had potential beyond casual companionship. Arriving at my parents' house, we were immediately enveloped in the controlled chaos that characterized family gatherings. Children racing through rooms, multiple conversations happening simultaneously, cooking activity at fever pitch in the kitchen. Catherine was welcomed warmly, my mother's hug lingering with meaning, my father's handshake accompanied by direct eye contact that communicated approval. My siblings were less subtle in their interest, each finding an opportunity to engage her in conversation, to form their own impressions. "She's lovely," Chloe whispered during a moment in the kitchen, not even pretending to be helping with food preparation. "Smart, too. I like how she actually listens when people speak." "High praise coming from you," I noted, knowing Chloe's standards for potential additions to family were exacting. "I'm just saying, if you mess this up, we might keep her and let you go," she teased, dancing away before I could respond. The meal itself was traditional and abundant, the conversation flowing easily around the extended table. Catherine integrated seamlessly, striking the right balance between engaging fully and allowing family dynamics to unfold naturally around her. As dessert was being served, my mother clinked her glass, calling for attention. "Before we all slip into food comas," she began, "I wanted to take a moment to express gratitude for this past year." Her gaze moved around the table, settling briefly on each face. "We've been blessed with health, with new life on the way." She nodded toward Jenna's now visible pregnancy, and with relationships restored and strengthened. This last was accompanied by a glance in my direction, subtle but unmistakable, to those familiar with our family history. "So much can change in a year," she continued. "Last Thanksgiving was a beginning, a return. This year feels like a continuation, a confirmation that what matters most in this life is not what we achieve or acquire, but who we love and how well we love them." The simple toast, heartfelt and direct, captured precisely the journey we had been on collectively. From fragmentation to wholeness, from distance to connection, from self-protection to vulnerability. As conversation resumed around us, Catherine leaned close to murmur, "Your mother has a gift for getting straight to the heart of things." "She always has," I agreed, though I haven't always been ready to hear it. Later, as guests departed and the house quieted, I found myself in the familiar position of dish duty alongside my father, a task that had become our tradition over the past year, providing space for the conversation that sometimes came more easily with hands occupied and eyes focused elsewhere. "Catherine fits well," he commented, passing me a platter to dry. "Seems to understand you." She does, I agreed. Better than I understand myself sometimes. He nodded, accepting this. That's valuable in a partner. Your mother's always been able to see through my bluster, get to what I'm really thinking before I know it myself. The casual inclusion of partner in reference to Catherine registered, as did the rare glimpse into his perception of his own marriage. I'm still figuring it out, I admitted. The relationship, where it's going. No rush, he said mildly. But when you know, you know. I asked your mother to marry me 3 weeks after we met. Everyone thought we were crazy. He smiled at the memory. 40 years later, still the best decision I ever made. This level of personal disclosure from my father was unprecedented, a gift I recognized and appreciated. I'll keep that in mind, I promised. The drive back to Boston the next day was companionably quiet, both Catherine and I processing the experience in our own ways. As we approached the city, she broke the comfortable silence. Thank you for including me, she said simply. I enjoyed meeting your family. They enjoyed meeting you too, I replied. That was clear. She hesitated, then continued. It helped me understand you better, seeing you with them in that context, the history you've all navigated together. I glanced over, curious. What did you understand that you didn't before? How much courage it's taken for you to open up again, to let people in, including me. Her expression was thoughtful. It would have been easier to stay distant, protected. You chose the harder path. That says something important about who you are. Her insight touched me deeply, recognizing the internal journey that had paralleled the external changes in my life over the past year. I'm still on that path, I acknowledged. Still figuring it out as I go. We all are, she said, reaching over to take my hand. That's kind of the point, isn't it? None of us has it all figured out. We just keep trying, keep connecting, keep choosing each other despite the risks. As we continued toward the city skyline emerging through the November mist, I considered her words. The journey of the past year had been exactly that. A series of choices to risk connection rather than protect myself from potential hurt, to engage rather than withdraw, to remain open to possibility despite past disappointment. The holidays were coming again, marking a full cycle since that pivotal moment when financial need had opened a door to reconciliation. This time, my place at the table was secure, established not by transaction, but by transformation, both theirs and mine. The exclusion had been real, the hurt genuine. The financial assistance had indeed been the bridge that began the reconnection. But what had developed since was something altogether different, something authentic and enduring, something that encompassed all of us in our imperfect humanity, capable of both wounding and healing, of distance and closeness, of fear and courage. I had learned that families, like individuals, are always evolving, growing, changing, making mistakes, finding their way back to each other. That reconciliation isn't a single moment, but a process, a conscious choice made daily to remain engaged, despite the complications and occasional setbacks. Most importantly, I had discovered that the willingness to be vulnerable, to risk hurt for the possibility of connection, was not weakness, but strength. That the open heart, though more easily wounded, was also more capable of joy, of meaning, of the profound satisfaction that comes from belonging fully to yourself and to others. As we pulled into the garage beneath my building, Catherine squeezed my hand once more. Coming up? She asked. Yes, I said simply. The answer applying not just to the immediate invitation, but to the larger question of continued openness, continued risk, continued engagement with all the beautiful, messy, essential connections that make a life worth living. The holidays were coming, and this time I was ready. Not just to take my place at the table, but to help create it, to extend it, to ensure that it always had room for one more, that no one was left wondering if they belonged. That readiness, That openness to all that lay ahead continued to feel like its own kind of victory. As winter settled over New England, the rhythms of life took on a comforting predictability that would have seemed stifling to me a year earlier, but now felt like a foundation rather than a constraint. Weekdays in Boston were filled with the challenges and satisfactions of my new position, where I was finding unexpected fulfillment in aligning financial expertise with social impact. Weekends at the lake house became a center of gravity for family and increasingly for friends as well, the space fulfilling exactly the purpose I had envisioned when creating it. Catherine became a regular presence in both worlds, her integration into my life happening naturally rather than by forced effort. She maintained her own apartment, her own career, her own friends and interests, but our lives were increasingly intertwined, weekend plans assumed rather than negotiated, keys exchanged, space made in closets and drawers. Christmas was celebrated at the lake house, its first major holiday hosting. The great room, with its soaring ceiling and wall of windows overlooking the frozen lake, provided the perfect setting for the massive tree my nephews and nieces helped decorate. The kitchen, designed with family cooking in mind, easily accommodated multiple cooks working simultaneously. The guest rooms were filled, children doubled up excitedly, every space alive with conversation and laughter. Standing in the kitchen doorway watching it all unfold, my mother directing food preparation with cheerful authority, my father and brothers arguing good-naturedly about the proper fire-building technique, Chloe organizing the children in making paper snowflakes to hang from every available surface, Catherine deep in conversation with Jenna about her pregnancy, I felt a profound sense of rightness, of completion. "Quite a transformation," my mother commented, appearing beside me with an uncanny sense of timing. "This house, this gathering, you." I nodded, acknowledging the truth in her observation. "It's been quite a year." "The best changes happen gradually," she said, patting my arm. "Day by day, choice by choice, until suddenly you look around and realize everything is different." "Wiser but not sadder," I replied, referencing our old family joke from when she would quote poetry at us. She smiled, pleased at the callback to shared history.